Okay, well, another terrific day on That's Classic. We have a gentleman here that to say that he's just a really nice person, talented. I think all of that just goes with it. But he played Willie Lawrence on the drama Family. He was in the film The Gift with Glenn Ford, and he's appeared on many other TV series. So I want to welcome Gary Frank. So. Gary, welcome to the That's Classic.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I have to say it's just a thrill to have you on. So I'll tell you what, first, right out of the gates, why don't I ask you this? How did you relate with your character, Willie Lawrence? Like, was it way out there for you, or were there some similarities between you and the character?
Oh, that's a very good question, John. Now, I'll probably talk too much on this, but nevertheless,
Please talk. No problem.
in 1975, I believe it was in the late February of 1975, I got a call to go on an interview at 20th Century Fox. This is a long story, but I'll get to your
No, no,
point.
no. Take your time. Seriously.
And I thought I got the call from my agent, and I said, "Well, that's wonderful, but I can't do that, right? Because I'm under contract to Universal." And she said to me, "Didn't you hear, Gary? They've dropped you." So I was out of work. I was out of work, but it was a good thing for me because now I was able to go and work every other place in town.
Wow.
So I immediately grabbed this interview, went to 20th Century Fox and met with Mike Nichols, the producer, and Mark Rydell, the director, for this project called The Best Years, which later became Family, of course. And I came in, there was some small talk between the three of us. I read a scene for them with the casting director there. A little more small talk, and I left. By the time I got home, there was a message on my answering machine telling me from my agent that I had gotten the part. Well, I went from unemployed to employed in one day, which was a very good thing, particularly for an actor because work was very hard to get.
Sure, sure.
So I thought, well, that's terrific. I got this gig now. I've got some employment. And then on March 2nd, it was, John, of 1975, we had a read through, a table read of the script at the Beverly Hills Hotel.
Interesting.
Very swanky place. I'd never been there before. But at the time, I had an old Jaguar that I loved it dearly. And I thought, well, okay, at least I won't embarrass myself by showing up in some old cranky car.
Yeah.
And so I showed up there at the hotel and was ushered into this room where this large table was set up. I was introduced to the rest of the cast, to Seda Thompson, to Jimmy Broderick, to Kristy McNichol, and at that time, Elaine Heilvel, who was going to play the part of Nancy, the older sister on the show. Also, there was a man named Laszlo Kovacs, who was the cinematographer on the show. He had been
Hmm.
cinematographer on a film called Easy Rider and he had this great reputation and was on the A list of cinematographers.
Very famous.
Yeah. And so there were all these folks out of the feature world, out of the film world, and they had gathered together to do this small little project written by a woman named J. Presson Allen, who had written this screenplay to Cabaret.
Oh, wow. I didn't know
So all these wonderful people, and I was just a small cog in this large wheel. And I thought, well, I don't know how I got here,
Were you
but we
intimidated at all when you walked in there and saw all of them?
I tried not to show it, but I sure was impressed. Yes, sir, I was.
Yeah.
And so we read through the script, and after the read through, I took the opportunity. I went up to Mike Nichols and I said, uh, Mike, why did you cast me? You'd seen everybody else in town, and there was I knew everybody else that had gone up for the part because we all went up for the same parts all the time. And he turned to me and he said, well, Gary, you weren't the best looking. You didn't give the best reading, but you did tell the most compelling story.
Wow.
What do you mean by that? He said, you told the most compelling story. And I said, well, how do you know that? He said, well, you get to reach a certain age and a certain point in your career when you just know. And I thought, well, that's terrific. And then he went on to say, you know, Mark and I really cast people the same way. We cast actors who need the same things as the characters.
Hmm.
And he must have seen that I needed the same things as Willie Lawrence. Roundabout way, that's getting to the beginning of the answer to your question.
I don't mind at all. Yeah. What were those things?
I needed a family. I needed acceptance. I needed reaffirmation. I needed reassurance. I needed a home. I needed a healthy set of parents, a healthy set of siblings. I needed to be able to be me, to be allowed to be myself. And I didn't have all those things in my own life, but I was offered all those things vis-a-vis the Lawrence family
Hmm.
on television. So that's what Mike meant when he said I told the most compelling story. He saw that I needed those things in our small casual banter, in the way that I read for him. Gary Frank needed what Willie Lawrence offered, and vice versa. Willie Lawrence needed what Gary Frank offered. I needed to fulfill the promise of that character. So I related to the guy on so many levels. We weren't that far apart in age. I was 25, I think it was, and Willie Lawrence was 17 or 18, I think, when we did the pilot. And I was young enough, certainly, to play that age. And I got what I needed out of playing that part. I got reassured. I got reaffirmed. I got accepted. I had a home to live in. I had parents who were healthy. I had wonderful relationships with my siblings. We all liked each other. And I've always said that it's easier to love someone than it is to like them. Mm-hmm. And we started off liking each other, and that grew into loving each other. So that's it in a nutshell.
No, I think it's great. Well, a couple of things there. One, Mike Nichols, just because we're it's funny. There's certain people that are on a higher level in the industry, and Mike Nichols is definitely one of them. When you met Mike Nichols, was he already at that, quote unquote level where it was like, wow, this isn't just any director. This is like one of the great ones. Did you feel that from him?
Oh yes, yeah, in a big way. He has, or had, I should say, a certain gravitas about him that was just overwhelming. You walked in and shook hands with him, and you immediately knew this was a man of substance. This was a man of great intelligence and wit and charm, and that was the same with Mark Rydell, I must say, and that was the way it was with Seda and Jimmy too, Seda Thompson and Jimmy Broderick, that they were large, they had great presence, and it was wonderful to stand in their light. It was a privilege to stand in their light, because not everyone got to.
Yeah.
So Mike was that kind of large, luminous character, and he had directed The Graduate by then, and Catch-22, so he was definitely on the top of the A list.
Yeah,
and I had known him from watching him on the Ed Sullivan Show and variety shows with his partner Elaine May, and the comedy team of May and Nichols. and I loved them from that. So it was a real privilege and pleasure to meet him and then to be able to work for him. Wow, that was heady stuff for a 25-year-old kid.
If you're interested in getting in on the fun of That's Classic and you might like to get a t-shirt or a mug or variety of items, you can go to my T Public merchandise store and order what you want and enjoy. I'll leave it in the description below the video. Check it out. All right. Thanks again. Yeah, that is. It's interesting. When we were comparing with Willie, not that we won't come back to family for anybody listening, but what was your upbringing like? That you alluded to about, your family and the situation. What was it like?
We were West Coast gypsies. We never lived in one place longer than a year and a half to 2 years.
Mm.
And we'd pick up stakes and move someplace where my father thought that he could find a better job. And he never found that better job. So we moved an awful lot. And so home was something distant I carried it in my heart and in my head. So for me, I was always home as long as it was inside me.
Mm.
And my parents were not the best parents at all. And I don't mean to speak ill of the dead at all, but they had their troubles and their challenges. And as I say, we're not the best parents. But now that I'm older, I understand what those troubles and what those challenges were.
Mm-hmm.
They existed, but they did nothing to make them better. They did nothing, no interior work to make them themselves better that would in turn make life better for all of us. So as a consequence, we were always chasing happiness.
I gotcha. Was it so by the time you yourself hit your early 20s, were you in a lonely place, let's say? I mean, because I don't know how you really make friends very well when you're traveling that much.
Well, I never did. Not lifelong friends. No, never did make those kinds of friends. And when I was I always had, and because of that, I've always had trouble making friends in the first place.
Hmm.
Because there's always that point, that fear inside me. Well, it's going to end anyway, Gary. So why bother?
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure.
I've really blown a lot of wonderful relationships, John, in my life because of that defect in me. Things that I people that I wish I still had in my life
Yeah.
that I don't have because of my lack of ability to keep people around me.
Yeah, it's a fair point though. Why? Yeah.
Yeah. So there was that. And in my early 20s, I was very shy with girls. I mean, I was more than awkward and shy with girls. I always had been. And I had no girlfriend, and I wanted a girlfriend desperately. And the reason I had a Jaguar was because I bought it because I wanted to impress this particular girl that I had feelings for.
Sure.
Well, that relationship lasted about 2 weeks, but I kept the car a few years longer than that. And then when I was 25, I met Carol, my wife. And we came together on June 24th of 1975 and got married on August 21st of 1975.
Boy, that's fast.
Yeah, 48 years ago. 48 years ago.
Wow, congratulations. And I do want to say for everyone out there, I have met your wife. I have spoken with your wife. You have a great wife and a wonderful woman. So I'm not just saying that to, you know, whatever. I'm coming from, my heart. She really is. She's a great lady. Great.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you very much, John. Thank you.
Yeah. Is by the way, on that, I mean, what the heck? I never follow an exact route when I do my show anyway. But since
Yeah.
we're talking about your wife, your wife is Carroll Newman, by the way, for everybody out there. She's a producer on family as well. Why don't you, for everyone out there, I have a sense of it, but I'd love to hear it. How the two of you did meet, because it wasn't like it was like, oh, there it is. It sounds
No,
like it took a little while.
it did take a minute and a half. we uh, Carol came over from the Waltons to our show to be associate producer at the beginning. So we had worked together during the first 6 episodes that constituted our first season of Family.
Hmm.
And so we did know each other. And then the networks, I should say, always had affiliates meetings when all the the network affiliate stations would come to Los Angeles, and they would gather together for the head of the network to announce the new shows, introduce the stars, for everyone to. There was a lot of backslapping and congratulations and so forth and so on.
Oh, I'm sure.
And so the cast of Family was invited as well. That was June 24th, as I say, in 1975. Well, I arrived there, and I was given a glass of champagne or something, wine, and I quickly downed to calm my nerves. And I didn't know anyone, of course, there. And I looked across the room, and there was Carol. And actually, I had been stood up by my date that I thought I was going to bring,
Oh my gosh.
the girl that I had the hots for with the Jaguar.
Oh, that is funny.
So I went all alone, looked across the room, and there was Carol. And I made my way across to her. And she turned to me to say hello. And I said, the first thing out of my mouth was, "Will you marry me?" And she said, "Yes,
Unbelievable.
of course, I'll marry you," joking around. And so we hung together for the rest of the evening. Now, unfortunately, to our chagrin, someone had overheard the exchange that we made there at the beginning, one of the network affiliate people, and went to Fred Pierce, who was the president of ABC at the time, and told him that Gary Frank and Carroll Newman were engaged,
Oh my gosh.
got engaged at the event. And so, lo and behold, before the end of the evening, he was up on stage at the Century Plaza Hotel, and he said, "I've got one more thing to tell you all." Listened with rapt attention. And he said, "Right here at the event, Gary Frank proposed to Carroll Newman, and they are now going to be married." Huge applause from everyone, John, and the spotlight went down on us, and it was just terrifying, absolutely terrifying. So we quickly sort of edged our way out together of the event there, went into the parking lot, and we sat in Carol's car for hours talking and talking and talking. And we got romantically charged, and it was just wonderful being in that
Wow.
car with this beautiful woman. And so she had been stood up as well. And so coincidentally, both of us had been stood up, and otherwise it would never have happened. Would have been there with her date. I would have been there with my date.
That's incredible.
Yeah, but there are no accidents in the universe, I don't think, John. But
Yep.
nevertheless, we so that was on June 24th, and from that point on, we were inseparable. Inseparable. She'd either come over to my apartment after shooting, or I'd go over to her apartment after shooting, and we were together every weekend. And finally, I while we were sitting in her car at 20th Century Fox one evening after having gone to a really lousy dinner, uh, I said, "All right, Carol, I want to tell you something. I want to be with you. I want you to, I want you to have my children. I want to stay with you for the rest of my life. Da 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 da. And all of a sudden she says yes.
Oh my gosh.
It happened for real. I proposed in my own way, and she said yes. And now it was on the up and up. Wow. Well, we didn't want to waste any time getting married.
Wow.
We didn't want to have it cut into our work schedule, I suppose. But we decided that we would get married within the next 2 weeks after that.
Oh my gosh.
And there was only one problem, though. Carol was still married. She'd,
Oh,
she'd been married uh, when she was a teenager, 18 years old, and never gotten divorced from her husband.
but they've been separated for quite a while, huh?
Oh yes, been separated for years.
Oh,
So we didn't know what to do. How do we get a divorce and get married within the next couple of weeks? And didn't know what to do. We could go to Reno, but that would have taken at least 6 months.
yeah.
In California, but that would have taken about a year. We had no idea. And so we called Carol's parents, and they were in London at the time. My wife's family are all in the music business, in the movie musical business, and they're all composers and conductors. And her father is a composer and a conductor, was a composer and conductor, and
Lionel Newman?
that's the guy.
Yeah.
He was in London to conduct the score to Star Wars.
Oh my gosh.
And so we called them to tell them that we were going to get married and for me to meet them over the phone. And Carol said, what do I do, Dad? What do I do? And her father said, well, call your Uncle Bobby. Uncle Bobby was about 4 feet 5 inches tall. And he had been the production president of John Wayne's movie company, of Howard Hughes movie company.
My
And
gosh.
when we were together, first came together, Carol and I, he was executive vice president of production at Paramount Studios.
Wow.
So he had this reputation of being able to get anything done. So Carol called Uncle Bobby. And he said, all right, well, you can't wait, huh? No, can't wait. All right, well, give me some time and let me think about this and I'll get back to you. So about 6 days passed until he called Carol and said, all right, here's what you're going to do. This was back in the days when Paramount Studios was owned by Gulf and Western Oil.
Yeah.
A big oil company. And so he said, this is what you're going to do, Carol. You're going to get on a plane from Los Angeles to New York. Take an envelope filled with $700 in cash with you. In New York, you're going to be met by a representative from Gulf and Western who will take you to a plane that will take you from New York to Miami, where you'll be met by another Gulf and Western representative. From there, you'll take a plane from Miami to San Juan, Puerto Rico, and then you fly to Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic.
Oh my gosh.
Where you'll wait to be met by a judge who will grant you a divorce within an hour. Oh my God.
Wow.
So convoluted, John. But this was on a Tuesday. Carol had a dubbing session on Thursday morning of the Thursday before we were to be married on a Sunday. And she was not going to miss this dubbing session for anything at all. So we made the plan. I would put her on a plane Tuesday night. She would do all the flying nonstop, get to Santo Domingo, take care of business and come back. And she did. She got to Santo Domingo and was ushered from the plane by a Gulf and Western representative to a large luxury hotel and taken out by she was introduced to the owner of the hotel, who took her out to sit by the pool while she went in and got a hold of the judge, who was going to come over on his lunch hour and take care of the business.
Oh, wow.
Carroll ordered a Bloody Mary, and she'd been up for 24 hours. And lo and behold, the judge showed up, and Carroll was taken from the pool into the owner's office, where this man in robes was sitting. And she passed him the envelope for $700. He signed a couple papers. She signed the same papers. And he said, okay, you're all done. And so
that's unbelievable.
she got back on the plane, retraced her route back, and arrived on a Wednesday evening so that she could get Thursday morning to her dubbing session. And we thought all is okay now. We got that taken care of, that large.
Yeah, yeah.
Except that when we all we had left to do was go and get a marriage license. And we were going to be married on Sunday, August 21st of that year, 1975. And so we had thought that we would just go over to the Santa Monica courthouse on our lunch hour on Friday and get our marriage license, marriage certificate. That sounded pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We got there, went up to the window. Carroll said, okay, I'm Carroll Newman. I got my divorce, da-da-da-da-da. And they said, well, Miss Newman, we have no record of that. I'm so sorry. Oh, no. Oh, my God. What are we going to do now? Went to the payphone in the lobby and called Uncle Bobby. Uncle Bobby said, okay, wait about 10 minutes and then go back in. We waited about 10 minutes, went back in, went up to another window there at the courthouse. And she said, I'm Carroll Newman, and I'm here to get my marriage certificate. And they said, oh, yes, Miss Newman, hang on just one moment. And she came back with these faxed documents for Carroll to sign again. And we were given a marriage certificate. So that was on Friday, the 19th of August. We had, and oh, John. We were also moving out of 2 apartments. We had found an apartment at the beach that we liked a lot. So we rented this apartment on the beach. And on that particular Friday that we went to the courthouse, I had the day off, as I recall now. And Carroll was, of course, working. But I had the day off. And so I was coordinating the moves from my apartment and from Carroll's apartment into an apartment at the beach in Venice. That plus the fact that my Jaguar, which are notoriously temperamental,
yes,
had quit on me. I put that on my dad. I said, Dad, can you go and rent a car for me so that I can at least have some wheels for this? And he said, yeah, sure, fine. And what he came back with was a taxi cab yellow GTO that and that was a real clown show with that. But we got everything done. I got us moved into the apartment. We were exhausted on Saturday, the day before our wedding, and had to go out. And Carroll found something to wear. I had something to wear, and we went to our own wedding on that Sunday, August 21st. That's it in a nutshell. Again, there's more, but I won't go into that.
That is one of the wildest stories of how you meet someone, what you go through to get married that I have ever heard easily.
Yeah.
Wow.
We could have waited, in 6 months, a year, something, gotten to know each other. But no, we wanted to get married and then get to know each other.
Oh, is that wild? Thank God for Uncle Bobby. That's all I gotta say.
And that's for sure. Thank you, Uncle Bobby, a million times.
Wow.
Yes.
What when you walked up to her initially at that party, was that just a funny line? Was that just a come on line? What was it?
It was just meant to be funny and to break the ice and to say hello. We had talked, but really didn't know each other. We knew each other a little bit from the show, but I didn't really know her. I I
Wow.
I thought I had a little bit knowing about her that she had a boyfriend, but other than that, I didn't know anything about her. So it was just out of left field, and it was the first thing that came out of my mouth.
Wow, that's a wild one. Because she was a producer on the show, was there ever a conflict of interest, so to speak, with her and you in the show?
Uh, no, not truly. I thought there would be some possibly because Willie Lawrence had a different girlfriend every week. It
Yeah,
seemed.
literally. Which by the way, I thought was rather ironic because you were talking about it in your real life. You're like, I wasn't meeting girls. On the show, you're like, how many relationships can a guy have?
I
Yeah.
know, I know. So I lived vicariously through him in that sense with women. And of course, there were a lot of scenes where there was love making and there were
Hmm.
risque scenes, and she wasn't bothered by any of it. The crew protected her. Our crew was fabulous, and they would protect her and shield her, literally shield her eyes from things that they thought that she shouldn't see because of what was going on in front of the camera.
Oh my gosh.
Really protect.
Did you feel any kind of like whether it be a bedroom scene or whatever, were you able to kind of just go with I'm Willie right now, I'm in the scene? Or
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, my focus was always on the work,
Hmm.
always on the work. Yeah, uh, and it it's it was better for me that way. You know, I learned a big lesson, John, in doing all that acting, working with different actresses and so forth. That I learned the difference between being in love on screen and being in love off screen.
Hmm.
And while I could be in love on screen and was supposed to be in love on screen, I wasn't in love with them off screen. I was in love with Carroll Newman.
Hmm.
And otherwise, I would have had a bachelor's life like none other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at another thing. Obviously, Kristy McNichol, who I've also had the opportunity to meet, a wonderful, wonderful woman. What was the very first time you met her? Was it at that table reading?
Yes, yes, it was. But you know, curiously, it wasn't the first time that Carroll had met her.
Hmm.
Carroll was working at Lorimar Productions on the Waltons at the time, uh, just before she came over to family. And Lorimar was did a short-lived show called Apple's Way.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, it didn't last very long, but it was a nice show. And Kristy was in that show.
Hmm.
And Carolyn remembered because she, during her off time from the Waltons, she went over and worked on Apple's Way as a production coordinator. And so she remembered Chris. And when she found out that she was going to do our show, and she found out that Chris was on our show, she said, "Oh my God." She said that I knew she would be great because I knew she was great on Apple's Way.
Hmm.
So they kind of knew each other from that experience.
Interesting. Did you and I know that you guys were close or have been close. What what was your initial, within the first I don't know, whether it be the table reading the first couple episodes, did you bond right away or did this kind of just formulate at a certain point?
I think we bonded right away. I just saw her. We just saw Chris and her wife, and uh, they came over and had dinner. And I love her so much. She is just the most wonderful woman. She's grown up to become this gracious, generous, soulful, spiritual, fabulous woman. Yeah. And her partner is just the best as well. So I just saw her and we bonded immediately. And that was a part of the uniqueness of our relationship is that it began boom like that from the very beginning. And we were brother and sister. And we had a very close relationship off camera as well as on camera.
What, I guess, give me a sense of like what, whether it be in between scenes or just, whatever, on weekends, whatever, what kind of stuff did you guys do together?
The cast really never saw each other uh,
Hmm.
away from work. She was always, listen, the way she worked so much, so long, and her hours were crazy. And on the weekends, I think she just rested, slept, played with a friend or two, and that's all she had the energy to do, which was the way it was with Carol and I as well. You
Hmm.
go home and you sleep and you do your laundry or you get a haircut or something, all those mundane things that you have to do in life.
Right, right.
So we didn't socialize off camera. In between scenes, we were tighter than a snare drum. We really were inseparable. And she of course had she had all her schooling on set, from a
Hmm.
studio teacher, and I felt badly for her in a way because she wasn't having that experience of actually going to school and being with other kids and having lunch hour and recess because she was a kid and all that wonderful stuff. But she was dedicated. And my wife says she used to show up at work every day with a briefcase, and she did. She would
What?
with the brief
Wow.
every day. She was that kind of mature, mature kid, and it was heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time, John. Because she was so good.
Hmm.
She knew things that you couldn't teach her. You couldn't teach her the things that she knew about acting, and and I don't believe she ever studied, no, at
Hmm.
all. I think she taught for a while actually, but she just had this natural, intuitive, intelligent ability to stand in front of the camera and be whomever she was meant to be.
Yeah, just believable. I mean, that's
Yeah,
one takeaway I take from Kristy is I always found her so real. Yeah.
yeah, yes, indeed, yes, and lovable. You
Yeah.
know,
Agreed.
yes, and I must say, likable. That there's that
Mhm.
saying again: easier to love somebody than it is to like them. But she was likable.
Yeah, I would agree. So, I mean, obviously, James Broderick, was on the show. Part of, I have to admit, I didn't put together at the time, like later, that Matthew Broderick was James Broderick's son. I didn't really put that together. But you were actually there when he was a young guy, when Matthew Broderick was young. Did you get to know him on any level? And did you have any sense that he had something special as an actor?
I know I've known Matthew, I think, since he was about 13.
Wow.
And indeed, you knew Matthew because he knew he wanted to be an actor when he grew up, in any case. And he did have something special. Yes, he did. And which is why he was cast in the Harvey Fierstein play Torch Song trilogy when he was just a teenager. I think 17 perhaps years old. And so he's been on stage his entire life, really, truly. He's been on Jimmy's wife Patsy was a teacher, an acting teacher at the Berghoff studio in New York. And Jimmy had also been a teacher, I think, at one time there at the same place, studio. But Matthew gleaned all this, I think, naturally, just from being around his mother and father, and of course, having their DNA.
Mm-hmm.
There was something very special about Matthew, no matter what. He was going to be large no matter what.
Gotcha.
One time back in those days, I smoked cigarettes, and I taught Matthew how to light a match on his zipper.
What a talent.
Yeah. I don't know what possessed me to do that, but nevertheless, I did. I taught him how to light a wooden match on his zipper. And so, fade out, fade in, we had our yearly hiatus when everybody went home for the summer or for the spring. And when we came back to work in early summer, Jimmy came up to me very angry, and he said, "I hate you, I hate you, I hate you." I said, "Wait a minute, what do you mean, Jimmy? What is that?" He said, "You taught Matthew, right, how to light that match on his zipper, right?" I said, "Well, yeah, I did." He said, "He almost burnt our apartment down. He started firing that bedroom of his, and he almost burnt down the entire place, thanks to you."
Oh my gosh.
Well, I felt terrible about that, awful about that. But I never should have taught Matthew how to light a match, part of his clothing.
Hey,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, we mentioned James Broderick. What was your relationship like with him? I mean, obviously he's another one that, he was great actor, great from the start, like all the way up. What was your relationship like with him?
I adored Jimmy, and both Carol and I did adore him. And I think he did back with us as well. It was reciprocated. Jimmy was a mischief. He truly was. He was he had this Irish mischievous sense of humor, and he didn't have a lot to do on the show. I must say, unfortunately, that he was used sparingly. I would put it, and he didn't mind that because he said that it's those interstitial moments that hold everything together that I'm in, and those are important things in every play to hold the narrative together. So he was happy with that, being that kind of an actor in the show, and he wanted to direct, and so he did. He directed 4 episodes of the show, and he was magnificent. He was wonderful. And I think he would have gone on to direct more things too on film if he hadn't been taken so early.
Way early.
Yeah, yeah. He died just a year after we finished shooting, and so
Unbelievable.
yeah, it was terrible. And he was a young man. He was only 54 years old, I think.
And he kept it to himself. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
he didn't want anybody else in the cast to know. I think Seda knew. I didn't want Chris or myself nor Meredith to know, and neither did the producers of our show, Carol and Nigel McKeon. But I got a call from Nigel one evening, like as I said, a year or so after we finished, and he said, "I hope you're sitting down because Jimmy passed." Well, my my God, I didn't stop crying, John, I didn't stop weeping for at least a week. And it makes me weep today too, because
Sure.
I loved the man. I absolutely adored that man, as did Carroll, as did everyone else in the cast as well.
Wow.
So
Terrible.
yeah, it was terrible. It was more than terrible. It was so tragic, so terribly tragic, that he didn't get a chance to see the success that his son would have, and the great success that he had. I think he knew that he would. Jimmy knew that Matthew would have great success, but I wish that he'd been around to see it for himself.
I do too. I do too. To continue watching my interview with Gary Frank, just go to the second episode, which is available right now on That's Classic. Enjoy. Gary is just terrific.